Valve leads PC gaming with Steam pulling in around 40 million online users daily. Big names like Amazon, Ubisoft, and EA have tried to take on Steam, but failed. Today, Valve's still king, and no one's even close. Let's begin with Ubisoft. In August 2019, Ubisoft's Senior Vice President of Partnerships and Revenue, Chris Early, criticized Steam's 30% revenue split as unrealistic in an interview with the New York Times. Chris argued that Valve's model did not reflect modern gaming trends, as competitors like Epic Games Store offered a 12% revenue split. So in 2019, Ubisoft began shifting away from Steam, starting with The Division 2, which got released exclusively on the Epic Games Store and Ubisoft's own platform, Uplay, now Ubisoft Connect. They were aiming to capitalize on Epic's lower fees and direct sales through Ubisoft's platform. However, this didn't work out for them, as many players called it inconvenient, sparking an online trend of no Steam, no sale. It wasn't just that. Ubisoft games on Epic Store, like The Division 2, saw extremely high fraud rates, with over 70% of transactions flagged as fraudulent, which made Epic halt sales. By November 2022, Ubisoft realized their big mistake, as their games stopped performing well. So they began their return to Steam, saying they wanted to focus on reaching bigger audiences. Then in 2024, Ubisoft announced that Assassin's Creed Shadows would mark the return of their new releases to Steam on day one. So after roughly 5 years of Ubisoft leaving Steam for their own platform and the Epic Store, they came crawling back. Talking about 5 years, Gearbox has to be mentioned. Back in 2019, Gearbox CEO Randy Pitchford decided to make a very bold claim, predicting that Steam would become a quote-unquote dying store within 5 to 10 years due to Epic's investment in technology and the 12% revenue split. But here we are 6 years later, and Steam is doing better than ever. This came right around the time Gearbox decided to make Borderlands 3 an Epic Games Store exclusive, as they secured a $146 million upfront payment from Epic Games. But this didn't come without backlash, as fans of the series started to review bomb previous Borderlands titles on Steam. So a few months later, when they decided to release Borderlands 3 on Steam, the CEO of Take-Two, Strauss Zelnick, said in an investor call that the Steam sales quote-unquote exceeded expectations, realizing that leaving Steam may have been a mistake. Fast forward to 2024, and Gearbox announced that Borderlands 4 will be released simultaneously on Steam and Epic, abandoning exclusivity, which led to Randy looking back on his prediction in 2019 of Epic overtaking Steam. Another company is Bethesda, as they launched Bethesda.net in 2016 to distribute their titles like Fallout 76 and the Elder Scrolls series, aiming to go around Steam's 30% cut. But they quickly realized it wasn't as easy as it seemed, as Bethesda.net ran into a wide range of technical problems, which ultimately made it unpopular and led to a bunch of user complaints. Fast forward a few years to February 2022, Bethesda announced the shutdown of Bethesda.net, with migration to Steam starting in April and the launcher becoming inactive by May. For Blizzard, in 2023, they announced that they would start to listen to players by releasing games on Steam, starting with Overwatch 2. But seeing as their launcher Battle.net actually released in 1996 before Steam, it does seem like it's more just Blizzard expanding their games to a more popular platform. But for Activision, the other part of Activision Blizzard, they were releasing games on Steam for years, until they shifted away in 2018 when Call of Duty Black Ops 4 was made exclusive to Battle.net. Microsoft later described this strategy as a resounding failure in court documents related to their acquisition of Activision Blizzard, noting it did not significantly grow Battle.net's user base. So Microsoft straight up called this move a failure. After a few years in 2022, Activision reversed its decision, announcing that Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 would launch on Steam, marking the franchise's return after leaving for 4 years. In 2011, EA decided to step away from Steam as they launched their own platform, Origin. By 2012, EA had pretty much stopped releasing major titles on Steam. However, Origin struggled to gain traction. So by late 2019, EA announced that they would be returning back to Steam with Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. That launched just 1 month later, ending a 7-year hiatus from Steam. But this wasn't just EA returning to Steam. There was some sort of collaborative effort behind the scenes between them and Valve. EA announced the first gaming subscription service available on Steam, EA Access. So EA realized that eating Steam's cut was worth it, as the player base was too big to ignore, which made them come back to the platform. Now, what many may be surprised by is that Amazon also tried to compete with Valve, not just once, not twice, but 3 different times. This comes from a top Amazon executive who admitted on LinkedIn that even though Amazon was 250 times larger than Valve, Steam was too powerful to take down. Their first attempt was in 2008, when Amazon acquired Reflexive Entertainment, a small PC game store specializing in casual games. The strategy was to scale Reflexive to create a competitive digital storefront. By 2009, Amazon began hosting casual games for internet downloads. But this didn't last long, as in 2010, Reflexive announced plans to stop selling games through its affiliate program in order to focus entirely on game development, where just a few years later, they would merge with Amazon Game Studio. Another attempt by Amazon was after they bought Twitch in 2014, Amazon launched the Twitch Game Store. The assumption was that Twitch users who were already engaged with gaming content would naturally purchase games through Amazon's store. Well, this completely failed, as Amazon misunderstood the gaming audience and the Twitch Game Store had no useful features. Amazon's third attempt was in 2020, when they soft launched Luna, a cloud gaming service designed to allow gamers to play high-end games without requiring powerful PCs. Luna was meant to compete with other cloud gaming platforms like Google Stadia and indirectly Steam. And although Luna is still around today, it definitely didn't affect Steam's dominance. This was all confirmed by a former Amazon vice president, Ethan Evans, who broke down Amazon's plans throughout the years and how Steam won every time, showing how even these massive companies like Amazon struggled to break into Steam's market. One interesting thing he said, which is true for most of these companies we talked about, is the truth is that gamers already had the solution to their problems, and they weren't going to switch platforms just because a new one was available. There is of course Epic with their Epic Game Store, which some will say failed, as Epic CEO Tim Sweeney is constantly whining about Steam fees, but I also wouldn't say Epic completely failed like Bethesda or Ubisoft, who had to come crawling back. But Epic definitely still struggles to compete with Steam and take a significant amount of market share. In 2023, Epic was in court and admitted that the Epic Game Store was still unprofitable. Epic has tried low fees, buying exclusive titles, and have even now more recently dropped their fees to 0% for the first 1 million. But Steam continues to grow. So maybe we see the Epic Game Store included in episode 2, maybe in a few years. What companies did I miss that try to compete with Valve, but ended up just failing?